we were talking the other day on the phone, and it was about great systems, memorable systems that we have heard in our audiophile lives. And it started because we were talking about your system. When I came to your place the first time to hear the all-tech voice of the theaters you had. You remember this?
Absolutely. At the time, I don't think anybody had heard anything like that.
Yeah, because Herb lived in a loft space, big loft. How many square feet was that? It was
the main room was 2,000 square feet with 20-foot ceilings.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so we could sit far away from the speakers. And we played some stuff, but the thing that I remember best is you played a Frank Sinatra record. I was in a Frank Sinatra mode at that moment. So I said, play some Frank. And he plays Frank, and it was like, whoa. Frank was so there, so believably, I mean, it was one of those that you just never get over. You never get over hearing that, like, because you've never heard it like that before. So that was a biggie for me. And what was the rest of the system?
I can't remember, because it changed a lot. I'm not sure what the amplification was at that point, but it was surely triode. And there were 2 record players. There was a Linn LP12.
I remember the Linn, because Mike Trey came over
Mike
to
Trey
set up
the Linn.
Right,
and it had a Fletcher MDC 800, the arm, and it had a Koetsu Rosewood signature. The rest, the electronics.
But you weren't working for Audio Note at that point?
No.
Right, so it was an Audio Note, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was an Audio Note. It was probably something homemade.
Because Herb, you made your own amplifiers.
Right. Yeah. But I just don't remember what happened, that particular day. It was probably a Flesh and Blood or something, because we were doing Phi. And that it was something from Phi.
Right.
So it was definitely something from that, because I believe JC was there that night. It was the regular crew.
Yeah. I mean, Herb's space in that firehouse was so good, so amazing.
Well, one of the things, though, that's important for people to understand, if you've never heard horn speakers, or particularly a 2-way like Altec horn speaker, what horn speakers do is they project the singer right in front.
Yeah, that was
like
big.
Out in front of the speaker.
Yeah.
And 99.9% of the hi-fis I've heard, everything's happening between and behind the speakers. And just reviewing amps and stuff, they move it back and forth. But the horn, it's like, if you're standing 8 feet from the horn, that person's 7 feet in front of you. It's really interesting like that.
Maybe that's what I was reacting
to.
Yeah. Because I had a couple of, I was thinking, because I made a list so I wouldn't forget anything important, but I realized that some of the biggies for me, and this was before I ever thought about living with clip speakers, is my experiences of hearing them. Like, there was this rich guy, I think I met him when I was working at Sound by Singer really early, so it'd be like 78 or something, and he lived in a big loft space. It was all white. He painted the speakers white, and he had Mark Levinson ML2 amplifiers and ML1 preamp. I don't remember the rest of his system, and he was playing, rock music of whatever was happening at that moment. And it was so intense, He played it really loud, like realistically loud or near realistically loud. And probably, talk about room treatment. I think this room definitely needed room treatment. But it just was one of those wow moments. I mean, and he was saying, that's only a 25-watt amplifier. And I was like, 25 watts? It's incredible, because the speakers were so sensitive. So there was that one. And then this time with my friend that Gene. He's a bluegrass musician, so he played Exile on Main Street through his system, and he definitely had a Linn. And I don't remember anything else in his system, but it was freaking amazing, because these little speakers, which he used as his PA speakers when he played in clubs, so his PA speakers and his home speakers were the same speakers. And it was, that was 40-something years ago, and I remember sitting there next to Gene, and we just had these big grins on our face, and we were just digging it. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the middle of the week, and he was just cranking the hell out of that system, and it was mind-roasting how good it was.
I remember Gene, and you might call him an audiophile. to me, he's one of those music first guys. He
Right.
plays
Well,
guitar, dresses like cowboy hat, cowboy shirt.
Yeah.
But it's like you have to kind of reach around behind to find out the audiophile part, because he definitely has
He's
that.
an audiophile. He's definitely an audiophile. But he's, matter of fact, I remember the day he bought his Lin, and he still has the Lin. I wrote a blog about it for CNET that he bought that Lin and he never changed. And he plays records constantly. He works at night as a musician. He plays records all day long, and he's been playing records on that Lin for over 40 freaking years. So
Why would he
he's
change?
Yeah, he's got the right turntable.
I mean, I remember when I first got that Lin, I had, don't laugh, a Denon DP3000.
Yeah.
Denon tone arm, Denon cartridge.
turntable.
Turntable,
Yeah.
yeah, and a Denon DL103, and a Denon step-up transformer, and I had that sitting next to the Lin.
Okay.
That was the first time, and I liked both turntables, and they're really, really different. But that was the first time I understood the Lin. I'm like, I get it. It plays your records, one record after another, for 40 years.
Right.
That's what it did.
Yeah. And now
I have one.
You have
I
a Lin in
still-
your system right
Right. I have I actually have the new all-out one, which I'm writing about, and I have my old 1984 Lin, and they're not comparable. They're really, it's like an old car compared to a new car is the
Right.
best way I could describe it, But you talk about the one, and he's our really dear friend, Mike Trey.
Oh, right.
I've known Mike Trey as long as I've known Steve.
Right.
And which is 40 years or something insane like that. But every time I've been to his house countless times, and there was a period where he had avant-garde trios, but all the rest of the time he's had quads, maybe slight variation.
No, when
of-
you first went there, I think he had Lin cans, right?
No, I met him after the Lin Can
okay.
period. He had quads when I met him, and then we shifted him into three-way horn, four-way horns. But I've been there even recently. And that system, it always sounds just right. And there's two reasons, I think. I mean, it sounds perfect. It doesn't matter. He's got 20,000 records. No matter, throw the record on, and it's great. And I believe it's because the speakers never move. And they're quads. They've been sitting right where they sit forever and ever. The second system that I heard like that was Peter Quartrup's in Hove, or Brighton,
From Audio Note.
from Audio Note, and he had the A&Es, and they sit in the corner, a little room, smaller than the room we're in, really small. These two speakers just sat there, and it didn't matter what electronics you plugged in. He always had a great turntable and a great cartridge. But the fact that they didn't move, and he had 20,000 records, and it didn't matter which one. Every one he put on, you'd get goosebumps and just fall asleep and dream and reverie. And the third one's our mutual friend, David, who has
Chesky.
quads, and they don't move.
Right.
And he'll go, I think I got to buy horns, but he never buys horns.
No.
And, I think I need to change this, but he never changes. And the point is, these are three of the most memorable, and I've heard some millions of dollar systems.
Right.
These three systems consistently are just like you let out your breath and you breathe and you enjoy. And most people, I think David Chesky and Mike Trey, for example, or even Peter Quartrup would all say, these are reference. Like I can put a record on that and know what's on that record.
Right. The other horn system was when I worked at a movie theater. And most of the movie theaters that I worked at had voice of the theater speakers. But the one that I knew most intimately in a hands-on kind of way was my first real job at Cinema Village in New York City, a small art theater, and they had a voice of the theater behind the screen, just one. And this is 1974, and I would make my own intermission recordings on a reel-to-reel recorder. I bought a reel-to-reel recorder for the theater just for intermission music. We used to play 8-track cartridges for intermission. I was walking past a pawn shop one day, and I see this reel-to-reel in the window. It was like a Webcore or something. I see it in the window, and I go, how much is that? So I bought it, and I took it in, and I started making reel-to-reel tape mixes for Cinema Village. And it was the most fun. It was so cool just to program music over the theater sound system. Now here's the thing, is that I heard all this music at home, but when I played it in the movie theater, in a real theater, a voice of the theater in an actual theater, it was so different. I mean, it wasn't mono, but it was just so different because the way it played the room. I mean, you couldn't get closer than probably 10 feet away from the speaker. And when you were 50 feet away from the speaker in the back of the theater, or 60 or 70 feet, it just was playing the room.
It was still there.
Yeah, and I was, and I knew this music so well, and I picked it because I liked it and because I was going to play it over and over again as intermission music. But to hear it in the room, it became more life-size. It wasn't coming out of a little speaker in somebody's house. It was coming out of a theater that seated 300 people. So it was a different experience, and that makes it one of the most memorable speakers I ever heard. So it was actually the same model as hers.
Pretty much, more than likely, almost identical.
Yeah.
But what's funny is that every single time, my whole life, and I'm old, every single time I go to the theater, before the movie starts and they're here, and then they go to the movie sound after the commercial sound, and I go, I wonder how this record or that record would. I've always. And
they never sound the same at home. I remember watching Apocalypse Now in this great movie theater called the Ziegfeld, which I don't think it's still open. But anyway, I saw Apocalypse Now at the Ziegfeld, and the beginning of the movie is The End, the Doors song, The End, right? So as soon as I got home, being the audiophile, I had to play The End, the Doors song. And it was hysterical because it was like, no way. It was so much more like being there over the Ziegfeld was a huge theater. I had like 1,500 seats.
It's the biggest, isn't it, in New York?
Yeah, well, yeah. Pretty big. And it was so different. And I forget what speakers they had at the Ziegfeld. But anyway, playing music that you know well, as I had the opportunity to do for 25 years. I was a projectionist for 25 years. To be in all these different theaters that I worked in and play familiar music over a theater-sized system, pretty freaking amazing.
I'm jealous of that. What I did do, though, when we were doing, Mike and I doing, avant-garde or whatever, horn system demonstrations, the end on Apocalypse Now, because you just want to sit there and watch people who've never heard this. Hear that helicopter coming in and going across. It was just made to for people to go, oh my God.
Yeah. But anyway, so those are some. And then the other one that I have that I forgot sort of at the last minute was Jeremy Kipnis' system. Did you ever hear it?
I did.
The other thing is he called it, this was misunderstood entirely, he called it the $6 million system.
No, I know this is, no, I did not hear that
You didn't
system.
hear that, right?
No, but I know the one you mean.
But anyway, it was basically speakers in a circle. I think it was 8 channels, and there were these Snell THX speakers and these giant Snell subwoofers, 18-inch subs, but 2 per channel. So there were 16 18-inch subs in this room, and they were in a circle, and it was all Macintosh electronics. I'm putting up a picture to show you what it is. My friend Robert Wright took those pictures, by the way. They're all over the internet. If you Google Jeremy Kipnis' home theater, you'll see these pictures. They're everywhere, and I was there the day that we did all that photography. And by the way, Jeremy being Jeremy, he took out all the wires of the system. It was such a complex system. It looked ugly with the wires. Right?
So it looked better.
Right, so he took all the wires out. So we did actually play it that day. So Robert, the photographer, never heard it. But anyway, that system did so well. It was a cinema system. He had a big screen, a high-def projector. But I was mostly there to listen to music, and I listened to 2-channel music, but sometimes played over all the speakers. Anyway, what it did well was it was effortless. It played dynamics that felt real, and not in a way like a horn does, because there were no horns in this system. It just had, the sound was distributed over so many speakers, and there was like 11,000 watts of Macintosh amplifier driving these speakers, something like that. And that was my takeaway, is that when he played loud music, it just felt so effortless, and the shading of the dynamics was just so lifelike, because it just didn't sound like a hi-fi system. And I don't think I completed my thought. So the thing about the $6 million price was he never ever claimed that there was $6 million worth of gear in the system. The $6 million was he wanted to sell this system, to basically reproduce it and put it in wealthy people's homes. And the price of the system, which included him designing the system to fit into your home, that was $6 million. I don't remember if he sold any or one or two. I don't remember that part of the story. But Jeremy was an amazing man, a dreamer, just a man full of life. It's so sad he passed away a few years ago, and I made a video about that. But when Jeremy was into something, he went in a really, really, really big way. And when I finally heard the system, it was overwhelmingly like unlike anything else. And I heard a lot of really great systems. But what it did well, it did many things really well. Tone was really good, by the way. He was into tone. And it was truly an exceptional experience, one that you just don't really get over. And that's what this video today is about hearing audio systems in various ways. Even the one I described earlier with Gene's little clipped heresies. You know, it wasn't the big, most expensive systems that were necessarily the most memorable. I was at I think a girlfriend of Andy Singer, and she had this little system with Snell E's. I can't remember anything else in the system, but I remember sitting there with her and Andy playing records. And I was like, this system is just, talk about well sorted out. It sounded great. Andy and I were shocked. We sold, truckloads of Snell E speakers, but over this woman's system in her apartment, it was just clicking. It was so amazing. So
you just reminded me of one of the systems I had totally forgot. I lived down in the Seaport, and my neighbor on the same floor, I was in the back loft, the guy in the front loft was a record collector, except he collected like Roy Schmeck. Who's
Roy Schmeck? I should know, but I don't.
What's his first name? Maybe I got the name wrong.
Not Roy Schmeck, I don't know.
He's a 5-string ukulele player.
It rings a bell, but okay, continue. We'll figure it out.
If I get the name wrong, Steve will correct it in a white line thing.
Right.
But he was a major record collector, but he collected mainly like these old 10-inch discs and 78s, and he collected sheet music. And he was really into this. He was like a world-renowned expert on this, and he also contributed to radio stations. But he had this system. He had tri-amped Snell Type A3s.
Wow.
And they were pretty close together. And he had two chairs, but you had to move one to get kind of two in. It was near field. And again, he would put these 78s on. I don't remember the turntable. It might have been a Lenko though, but he was putting 178 on after another. And by the way, most of the best systems I've ever heard were playing 78s. Really present, really, boom. But this one here was another one of those melt you. You just go over, pull out a record, throw it on and go, it just worked every time, which is still kind of what I look for. Not as a reviewer, but in my own system.
Yeah.
I don't want to be thinking about the hi-fi.
Right.
And his was like tri-amped. I mean, he had like a Bedini tube amp on the tweeter and all this stuff, but you never noticed it. It was just junk on the wall.
Right. Oh, I have to give a shout out for Mrs. Audiophiliac. When we lived in Manhattan, I had Snell A's, which is why this popped into my head. I had Snell A improved, and I had a Krell KSA 100 amp, and different preamps at different times. Audio Research, Spectral. Spectral was the one I think that stuck around the longest. And a Lynn turntable. And Robin, Mrs. Audiophiliac, loved the sound of that system. And when I eventually sold the Snell A's, she was saying, "You're making a big mistake."
I agree.
And it turned out she was correct. But that system, we were into like Elvis Costello and The Clash, that sort of music, Graham Parker. And we would just sit there listening to it, and it would be like, everything was happening. I think she enjoyed that system even more than I did. I enjoyed it a lot, but she was so into it. And every now and then it comes up in conversation, and she says, "You should have never sold the Snell A's." And I was like, "You're right." So
Quads and Snell A's are the two speakers that virtually everyone that I know that I would think has good hearing, good taste, they fell in love with, both of those.
As a matter of fact, when I had Snell A's, Andy Singer, the owner of the store, my boss, he had Snell A's. There were many much more expensive speakers that we sold, but Andy was really into the Snell A's, and I was into the Snell A's, and we stuck with those for many, many years. So did we do it?
I think we did.
All right. My name's Steve Guttenberg. I am the Audiophiliac. This is Herb Reichert from Stereophile. I hope you enjoy these shows. If you like what I do here on the channel, please like and subscribe. And all that other stuff. You can check out my podcast. In any case, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Herb, for being here.
Is there going to be an Audiophiliac system of the day?
Oh!
You're supposed to say that in the middle, you know.
Oh, right. I was supposed to preview that earlier. And yes, right now, there will be an Audiophiliac viewer system of the day. Hey, this one comes from Brian. He lives in Texas, and sitting atop his homemade audio cabinet is an Inuus, is that how you say it? Zen Mini Mark III server streamer with LP-SU passing through a Schiit Bifrost DAC and also a Schiit Saga preamp. They feed his Outlaw Audio RR2160 receiver. The Outlaw drives 2 pairs of speakers, Wharfdale Lintons and Magnapan LRS. Those are 2 different styles of speakers for different styles of music. And Brian points out, yes, he pulls the speakers out from the wall for listening. Finally, tucked inside that 1942 Philco radio is a Project Carbon turntable with an Ortophon Blue stylus. Bonus, there's a bonus here, Focal Clear headphones on a Captain Picard headphone stand. Amen. Thanks, Brian. Okay, so we're back again. Thank you for reminding me, and I can now say thank you so much for watching, and I really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.